Hey everybody, and welcome back to another lecture with Coding with Roby. In this lecture, we're going to create a new Python file called auth. And inside auth, we're going to create all of our authorization, authentication, and creation of users. So the first thing we need to do is create a new file called auth. So I'm going to right click our parent file of to-do app, and I'm going to say new Python file called auth. And now inside auth, we need to do a few imports. So from FastAPI, we need to import FastAPI. From Pydantic, we need to import base model. From typing, let's import optional. And then of course, let's import models. And now the first thing we always have to do with a new FastAPI file where we want to be able to call APIs is to create a variable called app, which is equal to FastAPI. Now, right above app equals FastAPI, I'm going to create a new class, and this class is going to be called createUser, which extends base model. When a new user is created, we want a username, an email, a first name, a last name, and a password. So let's go ahead and create this. So class createUser, base model, username of type string, email, which is of type optional string, first name, which is of type string, last name, which is of type string, and password, which is of type string. All right, so this is coming together. So we now have a createUser class that a user can submit on the client side, where they're going to pass in a username, email, first name, last name, and password. Now underneath app equals FastAPI, let's create a new request method of post. So at appDecorator.post, and as a parameter /create/user as a string. And now let's create a function called createNewUser. So async def createNewUser. And as the parameter, we're going to say createUser of type createUser from above. We then want to create a new variable of createUserModel, which is equal to models.users. And then we can just do all the transferring of data. So createUserModel.email equals createUser.email. CreateUserModel.username equals createUser.username. CreateUserModel.firstname will equal createUser.firstname. And CreateUserModel.lastname will be equal to createUser.lastname. We now want to say CreateUserModel.hashedPassword equals CreateUser.password. And then lastly, we want to set CreateUserModel.isActive to true. And now let's just return createUserModel. Let's make sure our application is running. If it's not, we can do this by saying unicorn auth :app -- reload. Let's open up our Swagger documentation and refresh the page. Here we can see that we have one API of createUser, And let's try it out. I'm going to say the username is Coding with Roby. The email is codingwithroby@gmail.com. First name Eric, last name Roby, and password is test1234 exclamation mark. If we click execute, we can see that we get a status 200 and we get an email of codingwithroby@gmail.com, username codingwithroby, first name Eric, last name Roby, hashed password is test1234 exclamation mark, and is active is equal to true. Now we're getting really close. Now we need to manipulate the hash password in our code to not just use the password that's sent in, but we need to encrypt the password once it lands on the server. And then we can encrypt it to whatever we need it to be using different types of algorithms and encryption codes. Then we want to save it to the database as the final step of creating a user. So this wraps up this lecture on creating our auth.py and creating our first part of our post request method function. And I will see you in the next video.